What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show, the home of Epic Conversations, and I'm the host of Epic Conversations. I was the 2020 Podcast News and 2018 Innovation Award winner given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. And also, once a month, I host the only podcast show, online show, don't know what to call it, that are for fathers and men around the world that is sponsored by Dove Men Care, and it's also co-sponsored by Dad Central, Canada's national fatherhood organization. And as always, I'd like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. If you know anything about Dr. Vibe, I love meeting new, incredible people. And through a platform called Clubhouse that I'm sure some people have or some people haven't heard about, I have met another outstanding person. And you know what was even better? She's going to be here with us today, but let me give a little background on our special friend today. Anjel B Hartwell, known as the Wealthy Life Mentor, is an internationally known artist, author, and evolutionary alchemist. Honored to be the Change Movement to Watch Award winner and considered one of America's premier experts. She has appeared multiple times in the major media and is a creator, executive producer, and host of the 2020 People Choice Award-winning and Apple #1 internationally ranked Wickedly Smart Women podcast. Love the name because I know some wickedly smart women, and this is one of them right now that I've just met. And it's hired to consult with high-achieving leaders who are called to be the vanguard of the creative age. Got to ask her how she came up with that one because I like that one too. She is a giver, wickedly smart, but most importantly, she has an incredible heart. So we are blessed and very highly favored today to have Anjel with us. Anjel, how are you?
I'm filled with fabulosity, Dr. Vibe. I'm so excited to be here.
You're a wordsmith.
I am. Me and words are friends.
Absolutely. Well, I really have to say thank you for taking the time to share with us today, because I've been blessed to be part of some of your all your epic conversations on Clubhouse. And I just said to myself, you know what? I'd like to have this lady share with us. And you said yes.
Of course I did, because you're awesome. You're Dr. Vibe. Dude, anybody who calls himself Dr. Vibe, I'm like, yes, I'm a yes to you.
You know, it was so cool because the first time I came into the Clubhouse room, you said, Dr. Vibe. Like you just said, there was curiosity right from the get-go. And I said, all right, let's go. And please, we're going to put up Anjel's contact information throughout the conversation. Follow her. Not only she just wisdom, evaluated experience, but she comes with the right intent and the right heart. So I'm endorsing her. So, hey, if you don't want to follow her, that's your fault and not my fault, but she is a wonderful lady. So Anjel, as always, when we have new friends on the Dr. Vibe show, give us a little background where you grew up, life growing up, the younger Anjel.
All right. Well, before I do that, I'm going to have to say, I got to tell my team they need to add endorsed by Dr. Vibe to my bio.
No, absolutely.
I'm like stoked now. I've been endorsed by Dr.
Absolutely.
Vibe. So
it's all good. If you want, I'll even do a little 30-minute second video for you.
Yeah, I'm down for that.
All right.
Let's talk about who I once was back in the day. So I grew up in the Merrimack Valley of New Hampshire, and I still live in the Merrimack Valley of New Hampshire. I literally was born in the city that I am living in right now, but I grew up in the next town over. And it was a farm town, so I would wake up in the summertime with the smell of cow poop and, floating through my window. So I'm pretty well grounded in nature and, the natural world. And I love living here because it is, it's just so beautiful here. But I do remember when I was little not liking it here and feeling very, just feeling like I needed to connect with the bigger world. Sure. And that it was too small of a space for me. Mm-hmm. And so I guess I'm just not really sure exactly where you want me to go with this, but I'll tell you, when I was little, what I wanted to be when I grew up was a heart surgeon.
Oh.
And I have come to the place now where I am, in some ways, a heart surgeon. I am in some ways a heart surgeon. I don't have blood all over my hands,
No.
but instead I support people to actually, a lot of people call it mindset. I call it heart set, right?
I love that.
I help people to bring into reality what they have their heart set on creating.
Nice. So when you wanted to be a heart surgeon,
Mhm.
how long did that dream last for?
I remember that I was 9 years old when I made that decision. I was 9 years old that I wanted to be a heart surgeon, and I got that clarity through reading. So my dad was a reader, and he used to have the subscription to the Reader's Digest. And back then, every month there was a section of the Reader's Digest that talked about organs, people's organs, right? And it was called I Am Joe's. So I am Joe's kidney. I am Joe's brain. I am Joe's spleen. And I am Joe's heart. I read I Am Joe's heart. And I was like, oh, I want to be a heart surgeon. And I carried that for a while, and then I kind of tucked it away. And when I graduated from high school, I actually graduated a year early. And so when I graduated, which makes me wickedly smart, I guess, I graduated a year early. And when I graduated, I wanted at that point to be a pharmacist. I had decided I wanted to be a pharmacist. Like anatomy and physiology was my favorite subject. I really loved anatomy and physiology. And so I ended up going to college, but my dad lost his job 2 weeks before I graduated from high school.
Yeah.
And so I had 1 year, and my major at Penn State was biochemistry. I had 1 year, and then I had to leave because my dad had made too much money in the previous year, the year that he lost his job, to qualify for any of the grants or loans or whatever at the time.
Yep.
But by the time, I got around to actually needing money from him, he couldn't provide the money because he had invested in a piece of real estate that ended up being a hazardous waste dump, unfortunately.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so it was just like so my track went in a different direction. And I just started working and became, I worked as a waitress. I worked in the drilling and blasting. I worked for a drilling and blasting company. I did.
Are there pictures of that?
No, probably not. There might be somewhere buried in a box somewhere. Yeah, I worked in construction. I worked for a paving company. I mean, I just did a lot of different things, and I did a lot in bookkeeping. My mom taught me how to bookkeep when I was 7 years old. She had a yarn shop in our house. So I was learning how to do debits and credits when I was 7 or 8 years old, and I was learning how to ask for money. Dr. Vibe, I was learning how to ask for money when I was 7, right?
Wow.
Yeah. When I was 9, I sold 763 boxes of Girl Scout cookies when I was 9 years old by knocking on doors and calling people. And the next nearest girl sold 27 boxes. So I've been an overachiever for a while.
So you're reading my alleged mind, because I was going to ask, where did the business acumen start?
Yeah.
And it started at a young age.
Yeah, very young. My mom had a yarn shop in our house. And so the little ladies from the town would come in and buy yarn, and I was in charge of the cash box, right? So I was like, here's the yarn, give me the cash. I was answering the phone. My mom had a lot of aspirations for herself. And my dad, he was in sales. My dad was a car salesman. And so, I think from both sides, my mom and my dad, the business stuff, and my mom and he had met in the car business. She was a bookkeeper in a dealership, and he came into that dealership to do a trade. And she saw his shoulders. That's the story.
You saw his shoulders. All right. So Penn State didn't happen.
I went for a year. To Penn State, lived with my half sister. And then when I came out of that year, the finances weren't there. So I went to work. And I worked from 18, 19 years old until I was about 27, when I ended up in my first marriage. And my first husband, we had a lot of challenges with one another, but there is a couple blessings. One was my son. My son was a blessing out of that. But another blessing is he actually challenged me to go back to school and get my degree. So I ended up going back to school, and I graduated summa cum laude like 5 months after my son was born, with a degree in business management. And I went to night school. I went to night school. So yeah, and he and I were both going to school together. So we graduated together. He and I graduated together, and we had our baby was like, I don't know, 5 or 6 months old when we finally graduated. So yeah.
You are an overachiever. You are an overachiever.
Yeah. And by then I was also in the real estate business. So that at that point I was in the real estate business, and I was working with a partner, and we were doing management, real estate management. And I spent 20 years in the real estate business. So
what did you learn from the real estate business that you're still carrying on today?
Well, so the first thing I learned in the real estate business that I'm still carrying on today is that everything needs a blueprint and a foundation, right? And so if you're called to be a messenger, and if you're called to serve people in the world, the way you and I do right now, which is basically we're converting our wisdom into wealth. We're serving by, sharing our messages and by speaking our vision and motivating people and those sorts of things. Even a business that is as nebulous as that, right? Where we're literally taking ideas out of the blue and turning them into something that people can offer. Even those things need a foundation, and they need a blueprint. And so, how I like to work with people when I'm serving them is I like to start with, do you have a blueprint? Do you have the strategy for how you're going to create the business and the model and the structure for your business that's going to allow you to have the lifestyle that you want? Because for me, having a lifestyle business is really important. It's been very important since I left the real estate industry. It became very important for me to have a lifestyle business. So first we look at what's the lifestyle that you want to have, right? And then, well, what's the blueprint to build the business that's going to serve your lifestyle so that you can feel full to overflowing while you're serving in your business, right? So we want to make sure that we structure things properly so that as a messenger, you're coming from your overflow. You're serving from your saucer, not your cup. So that's the first thing, is making sure you have the blueprint. And then the foundation, well, the basic foundation of any business, I don't care whether it's selling cars or selling yarn in the yarn shop or selling services, any business, you need to have real clarity in what you're offering, the value of what that offer is, the capacity to communicate the value of that offer in a way that allows the people who are listening to you to say, oh, that person gets me. They know what I'm looking for, and they seem credible and capable of being able to deliver. And then from there, having the capacity to have the selling conversation. And business is pretty simple. It's basically, have something to offer, communicate that you have that thing to offer, make that offer, make the deal, serve the person beautifully. Like, we want to serve the people beautifully so that they actually are able to succeed. And then we just, take and work on the momentum of the success of our clients to generate more clients. And it's pretty simple. Like, business is really simple. That's all you have to do.
So you're dropping knowledge bombs, as we say on the Dr. Vibe show. But if it's so simple, why is it so tough for so many of us?
Great question. Well, there's a few reasons why. Let me see which way I want to go with this. So I want to talk to people who are called. Anybody who's called, and this was my experience. When I left real estate, it was because I had a spiritual awakening. And as a result of that spiritual awakening, I was really called to serve people and to let people know that they didn't have to be in suffering, right? That there was a way out, right? And a lot of times people who are called, so I came from the real estate industry. Right. I didn't know crap about how to set up my own consulting business. I didn't know crap about that. I knew nothing about it, right? But the calling was so powerful that I simply served until I got empty because I couldn't not do it, right? So I didn't know that I actually needed to set up structures that allow me to receive in exchange for what I was delivering in a way that was, mutually beneficial.
Yep.
So number one, people who are called often are so compelled that they're literally throwing spaghetti against the wall, or what we call spraying and praying. So they're spraying out their message, and it's literally like throwing water into the desert. You can sprinkle water into the desert and all of a sudden something will blossom. But as soon as the storm is over, or the water that you've sprinkled into the desert has moved past the desert, everything dries up again. And so anybody who's called to be a messenger, they have this, like, they must share their message, but they don't necessarily know how to deliver it in a way that allows people to take the next step, to understand this is just a tiny, it seems like a lot. It seems like I'm giving a lot today, right? But it's barely scratching the surface of how I can serve and support people. So that's number one. Number one is, knowing, or they don't know. They don't know that what they don't know. They don't know that they actually need to have a clearer structure for monetization. The second thing is oftentimes people come out of, like, quitting the corner office, right? They, like I did. I came out of the real estate industry into the expert, right, messenger industry. Personal professional development industry. I came out of real estate and into this. And so I didn't know how to have the one-on-one or the one-to-many sales conversation in the way that would allow people to convert into clients, from prospects into clients. I just didn't know what I didn't know. I knew how to show somebody a house, right? I knew how to sell Girl Scout cookies. Selling a product is different than selling a service, and it requires a different structure. And again, we're going to use that word structure. So those are two reasons why, to answer your question.
That's fantastic. You left the real estate and eventually got into podcasting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because you have shaken my thought process in a good way. Because when I first got into podcasting, I didn't think about monetary. But now, whenever I hear you share, when people say, when should I think about making money in podcasting? You say right from the get-go.
Yeah, before you even start.
Well, yeah, and you are living proof. So I'd like you to share your living proof story of how you made money rather quick in a podcast.
Yeah. Well, and so part of it, Dr. Vibe, is I had already been in a business structure. I had a business model where I had structured it to serve my life. So that was step one. I love to spend the summer outside and not working, right? So my lifestyle is 12 weeks off in the summer, right?
Wow.
I'm an artist. I spend time painting. I'm very spiritual. I spend time in ceremony and ritual. So I needed to set up a business model and a business structure where the value that I deliver can be delivered at a very high level of investment and in the minimum amount of time required to that value. So my model is either one-to-one or one-to-small. And I don't have a huge structure of 27 different platforms of places where I have to show up and do my study and all these. Like, it's very simple. If you want to have a business I have, I believe you're Dr. Vibe, really requires craftsmanship, right? There's a notion of what it is that you are creating. And at the beginning, at the set of that, creator, the founder, you must. And you must make sure that you have covered what a friend of mine, her name is Allie, calls your thrive, minimum to thrive. Like doing math, because when you do the math, are right in your face, right? So how I got into podcast, had clarity on my math, I already had clarity, already had clarity on the market because I'd been doing virtual speaking since 2008. I was a single mom to the speaking space when I came into the personal and professional. I no way I was going to spend 63 days of the year on the road. Kiddo, that was my responsibility. I was coming to being for the ball team after every game. I was the mom where all the kids came to my house after school because I was there, right? I was the mom that kids were coming and they were confiding me or asking me for guidance. I had set up a model, allowed me to pay the mortgage on it. Well, it was a $250,000 mortgage, $450,000, and me to ensure that my kid had new sneakers because puberty he needed new sneakers. 3 weeks, it was cray. So, into podcasting all of it. So when a show called the Men's Podcast, and when I started my show, I already had crafted a very clear offer for how I was going to work with the men who I knew were going to become my guests and were going to ultimately become my clients. And I had first figure payday, what I call it. I have my 5-figure payday podcast. I had my 5-figure payday within 4 months of launching the show.
Wow. So, and unfortunately we had some Wi-Fi challenges, but we'll work through that. Why pick a men's show? That's where did that idea come from? Because I know in Clubhouse you talked about this story, but I want to know what thought process said, I want to pick a men's show to do.
Yeah. So after my spiritual awakening in 2001, I started living my life under the GBS system, which means guided spirit. So everything I do in my life is guided by spirit.
Right.
So what happened was between 2008 and 2016, I generated multiple millions of dollars from home as a single mom.
Wow.
At the same time, my son was going down the heroin hole.
Well, I'm sorry to hear about this.
And it was 7 long years of absolute horror. It was heroin. It was every drug that you can imagine and some that you don't even know exist. So I was like in that place, want to be this kind of super mom, right? I'm after the team, and my is going deeper and deeper into the hole. My revenue generation it had ever been that person, and he was the lowest ever been, having been arrested a couple times, having gone to rehab.
Wow.
And as 2016 dawned, within the first 4 months of 2016, we ended up having what I call now the life rupture. And the life rupture resulted in him actually locking me in the basement and telling me he was going to cut me up in little pieces and throw me in the river when he was high on, I found out later what he was high on. He was high on benzos and fentanyl. And the reason why he went crazy that night was because I finally confronted him because I found that he had been ordering heroin and fentanyl online on my computer system using Bitcoin. And so thankfully, because I live a life guided by spirit, there was a moment where he left the room and went upstairs to use the bathroom, and I was able to escape. I heard "go now" loud and clear. I heard it clear as you and I are talking. Go now. So I went and I left the house and escaped to the forest. And it's so mythic. It's like not even, it's almost unbelievably, what happened. It was almost unbelievable. But what ended up happening was literally the guy who came and got me out of the forest was Officer Friend. I mean, you can't make this shit up. Officer Friend came to get me out of the forest. What ended up happening after that was my son went to jail, all the things. He's very well now, let me be clear. And it was a rite of passage for both of us. It was a rite of passage for him out of childhood and into manhood. And it was a rite of passage for me out of motherhood and into elderhood. And so thankfully I have, a deep spiritual practice that allowed me to be in it, but not of it.
Yep.
In it, but not of it. And what ended up happening after that was my business completely collapsed over the course of the next year until in February of 2017, I made $7 that month in my business. And that at that point, I knew I needed to surrender everything, right? I just had to surrender everything. And so I surrendered. I put my business in the fire in early March of 2017. I put my business in the fire and I sat for 10 days and I said, okay, I'm open to receiving what's next. And I ended up being selected during that period of time for a new show to be a case study on a show called Fix My Brand. And the woman who selected me, we had a relationship from 2010. So now it's 7 years later. We knew one another from 2010. She selected me to be on her show. We rebranded my whole thing. And in that rebranding process, that was when the message came through that I was now supposed to serve men. So up until that time, I was serving mostly women and a few very wise men to help them feel great speaking and powerful asking for money. And I had clients all over the world, multiple millions of dollars. And so then it became very clear I needed to serve men. And out of that rebranding process, at first we were going to do a TV show, and then I was like, yeah, no, the men I'm supposed to serve are not listening. I mean, watching internet TV. These are people that are not in that space. And then the idea for the podcast came in, and it was divinely inspired. And so I said, yes. So I said, yes, I'll do a podcast called Men on Purpose. And part of what happened, Dr. Vibe, was I became clear during that period that I had spent my entire life in relationships with men because, backstory on my childhood, my dad was a raging alcoholic and very physically abusive. I had spent my entire lifetime in relationships with men who were either addicted, I felt alienated from, they were abusive. And so, I was the single unit thread in all of those relationships, including the one with my son. I was the single unifying thread in all those relationships. The first husband, the second husband, the bad boyfriends, the cop who was my boyfriend and put a gun in my face, all the things. They were either abusive, or I felt alienated from them. And so the Men on Purpose podcast was launched out of that.
Yes.
And then I did 163 episodes, and the whole thing was a healing. The entire podcast experience of those 163 episodes, including selling the podcast last spring. I sold the podcast because I had started Weekly Smart Women the fall before, and I got it was too many at that point. So I sold Men on Purpose in the spring of 2020. And it was the whole thing was a healing for me.
That is a phenomenal story. Thank you for feeling like you're in a brave and safe space to share that. That is phenomenal. Thank you for doing that. Like, we could end everything just now. I'm good. I'm good. Like, I mean, I think if you ever write a book, Overcomer should be the title.
Maybe. We'll see. We'll see. I have lots of books inside me, Dr. Vibe. I have so many books inside me. Yeah.
I can imagine that. Do you miss not doing the Men on Purpose podcast?
That's an excellent question. So I'm hyper creative.
I can tell.
Hyper creative, right? So at the point, so let me go back. In September of 2019, I launched Wickedly Smart Women.
Right.
I had a 5-figure payday from that podcast before I even launched, which was awesome. So I did Wickedly Smart Women September, October, November. By December, this is too much. I need to not be splitting myself between these two shows. And I made the decision to go on hiatus with Men on Purpose. I thought, okay, I think I'll just take this on hiatus. By then I had a bank of interviews that was going through April. So I said, I'm just going to put it on hiatus. And then like I always get ideas in January and May. So in January of that year, I had the idea to do a third podcast. So now I have We the Smart Women, Men on Purpose is running.
Oh
and
my!
Our third podcast came in.
Oh my!
Another one.
Yeah.
And so what I like to do is I like to, because I am hyper creative, and I've learned how to rein that in a little bit, because I could just spread myself like water in the desert, instead of being like the person at the well who is providing a ladle in exchange, right? So I was going to do this third podcast, and then I said, well, I'm not going to launch that until I'm clear what I'm doing with Men on Purpose. And then Corona came. And so the third podcast would have been a show that was both men and women. Yeah. And so would I want to do Men on Purpose again? If the guy who is doing it right now fell apart and it became clear that it was time for me to step back in again, I would do it, but I would definitely want to be, rethinking my own business model and making sure that puzzle piece fit in properly in service to the bigger vision that's being brought to me. And again, I'll say I'm guided by Spirit. So if Spirit said to me tomorrow, start another podcast and be interviewing men, whether it's Men on Purpose or something else, I probably would say yes, because Spirit guiding me actually has allowed me to be sitting here having this conversation with you right now, and also allowed my son to be able to make his rite of passage and, step into his sovereignty and step into his well-being. And he's really well now, just to be clear, to underscore that. He's really well. That's
what we all want to hear. Most importantly, that he's doing fine. You mentioned with the Men on Purpose podcast, it was a great, for lack of a word, cleansing,
healing
for you. Did you learn anything about men that you did not know before you started that journey?
Yes. They're sensitive, and they're people. They're people too. They're not aliens.
There we go. Thank you.
Yeah, they're not aliens, and they are sensitive. And so here's the other thing that happened with Men on Purpose, because when I got the clarity that I had been the single unifying thread in all of these abusive circumstances, I realized that my vision was on, being prepared to, fend off attack. Right? Yeah. Being like, I was always on the alert and always like looking for the danger, right? I was looking for the danger because that was what I experienced, And what ended up happening for me was, as soon as I made the decision to do the Men on Purpose podcast, my vision had to shift to look for Men on Purpose.
Yes.
Literally, I took the focus off the abusers, moved the focus onto Men on Purpose. And I was delightfully surprised to find that there are a shit ton of them in the world.
Yes.
And so that was a big piece of that process as well.
Nice. So how did Wickedly Smart Women come into being?
In the spring of 2019, it was in the spring, stuff starts to come. Right?
Yeah, you this January thing. Yeah, this January thing. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so the idea came in January, February timeframe, and then I played around with it for a little bit. And I have a colleague that she and I have spent the last 4 years in a strategic alliance with one another, where we met each every month, and we either dove in and did some deep healing work, or we dove in and we did some deep strategic work about our businesses, or usually it was a combination of both. Like I like to say to anybody who's thinking about working with me, that I bring spiritual technologies and practical strategies together in a divine union. And so if I'm working with a client, or in this case it was strategic alliance, I'm going to bring every bit of what I have to the table. The intention is. So she and I were working together, and we were going through some stuff, and all of a sudden this idea came for Wickedly Smart Women, and then I said, I was a little reluctant, actually. I have to tell you, I was a little reluctant, because I had, just spent a couple of years really working with men, and, wasn't really 100% on board. But then the name came, Wickedly Smart Women. I was like, oh, okay, I can do that. I can do that, because I also believe, Dr. Vibe, and I love that your name is Dr. Vibe, whatever we name something is what we are living into, or what we are acknowledging in ourselves, or what we are intending to elevate, celebrate, and spotlight. And so, so when Wickedly Smart Women came in the spring of 2019, I was a little reluctant and a little resistant, and partly because I was already doing that on purpose, but I said yes, and started recording in the midsummer, and launched the show September of 2019. And within 4 days, we were ranked at number 75, and actually number 25 in Switzerland or Sweden or somewhere. So we ranked within 4 days of launching the show. And so now it has a momentum of its own, and it's a movement that I'm here to hold the vision for and allow it to organically grow in a way that I'm not to be a control freak on it. That's the guidance from the upstairs teams. Like, keep your hands off of the wheel on this. We've got it.
Yes.
And just show up and be the talent, right? Because
Nice.
that's what we're here to do.
Was it any different starting up Men on Purpose versus Wickedly Smart Women?
Oh, it was exponentially easier starting up Wickedly Smart Women, because I already had the system in place. In fact, I help people. I don't put this front, it's not a front door thing. I actually help people start podcasts. If it seems like it's a fit. A lot of people want to start a podcast, and they don't have all the other structures that we've already talked about in place. And they put the cart before the horse. So I actually have a program that I offer people called Start a Podcast Now, which you can find out about at startapodcastnow.com. But again, it's not a face front thing in my business. It's really more of a selected thing. And so I help people to start podcasts in a way that allows them to, have all of these things that we've talked about, kind of in the forefront of their thinking. Mm-hmm. And then I supply them with my team, and I supply them with my signature system for podcasting in a way that's prosperous.
Nice. The name, The Wealthy Life Mentor, how did that come about?
Yeah, so that came about right around the same time that I was getting ready to launch Smart Women, and it was distilled out of a body of work that I had started, kind of just getting the glimpses of back in 2016, right before that rite of passage happened, where I became clear about the 5 ways that we ward off wealth and some ways that we can welcome it instead. And so the Wealthy Life Mentor and the Wealthy Life Method is actually an original body of work that's been emerging since 2016 that I've been putting out there and presenting. And I like to call the wealthy life, I like to define a wealthy life in a way that's a little bit different. A lot of people hear the word wealth and they immediately just think the money part. But for me, wealth is the sum total of all of the resources that we have available to us. And I like to use the mnemonic device, thief. I like to use the word thief, which is interesting, right? To talk about those those resources. So we have time is number one. We have our health. That's number two. We have our intellect or imagination or intuition. You know, imagination is kind of a combination of both your intellect and your intuition. So we have our imagination. Then we have energy exchange, and energy exchange is the money part. It's like 20% of this equation. And then we have fun with our friends, family, and fellow travelers on the journey. And when we have a wealthy life by design, and I help people through using my wealthy life method to get there, when we have a wealthy life by design, we're not stealing from any of these areas. Most people are stealing from one or more of these areas, and that is what causes them to be in struggle. And it's because they don't recognize that a wealthy life is actually way more than just the money.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, because I say to myself, money, for me, money funds the mission. It's not the mission.
Yeah, exactly right.
So I appreciate your verification on that. What do you feel is the biggest challenge you see people serve or face who are called to serve a particular purpose or mission that requires them to step into the role of entrepreneur?
Yeah, well, we talked a little bit about this at the beginning, and part of it is they don't know what they don't know, right? So let me just tell a story. When I first got into the entrepreneurial online space, I had left behind the real estate industry, had my spiritual awakening, had opened up an art gallery and healing arts center because I took a course from somebody who told me I needed a platform. I didn't know what the hell they were talking about. I had no idea what they were talking about. So my idea was a platform was to start my own art gallery and healing arts center. So here's like a sidebar. If somebody says something and you don't understand what the hell they're talking about, raise your hand and ask. Don't make assumptions. I didn't understand what she was talking about. Truthfully, I didn't know that she meant an online presence, right? If she had used the words online presence, because sometimes what happens is when you're in an industry and you're speaking to somebody who's outside the industry and you're using industry jargon, they can make assumptions that, you know, they wouldn't normally make if you spoke to them in a language that they can understand. So when I needed a farm in 2003, I was like, okay, I'll start an art gallery. And so I started an art gallery, my platform for 2 years. Then I did a street festival 2 years in a row, which brought 6,500 people to my downtown. It was called Firefest, a celebration of the visual, performing, culinary, and healing arts.
Wow.
And so the first year we had 40 vendor booths and 15 live performances on 2 stages, and the mayor gave me everything, and it was like a vision, and I just followed the guidance, and the whole thing came together like butter on hot toast. And here's a little key. The second year, people lobbied me to do it. It wasn't a vision. It wasn't something that came from me that I was like, oh my God, I have to do this again. People lobbied me to do it because it was so successful the first year. So I said yes. I probably should have said no. And in the second year, because, you know, overachiever, in the second year, I had 80 vendor booths, 35 live performances on 3 stages, and the new mayor fought me every step of the way. The first time, the old mayor was like super generous. The new mayor was not generous at all. So anyway, I never will do a street festival again unless the guy upstairs team says to do one. And then I came into the speaking space, and I didn't know what I didn't know. I started by setting up a website. I decided I needed to learn HTML. Taught myself HTML, right? Back in 2007 or whatever time frame. So if there's anything that I can say to people who are called, you want to get somebody to serve and support and partner you as a mentor, a consultant, a trusted guide, whatever you want to call them, who is where you would like to be. So in my case, I'm very heavily weighted in my business to my lifestyle being served. Because if I'm here to be the messenger, I must be thriving. I must be fed by spending time in nature. I must be fed by spending time creating art. I must be fed so that I'm full, overflowing, and I can be from my cup. And I know how to do math, super important. A lot of people come into this field because they're called, but they don't do the math. They don't recognize that they actually have to become what I call an accidental entrepreneur. I became an accidental entrepreneur. When I was in the real estate business, I was in a partnership, and I kind of leaned on my partners to understand a lot of the pieces of it that I didn't understand. I brought a piece to the table. They each brought a piece to the table. But when you step into solo entrepreneurship, you are literally the one in charge of making sure you have supplies. You're the one in charge of making sure that the marketing's working. You're the one in charge of making sure that the service delivery is happening. You're the one in charge of making sure that the sales are happening. Like you have the whole enchilada on the table. And a lot of times we just want to do the fun things, or we put ourselves in the rabbit hole of the shiny object that we buy way too soon in the journey, in the entrepreneurial journey. And so by hiring somebody who has gone the path, it's kind of like you go to Mount Everest, right? If you're going to Mount Everest, you can climb to Mount Everest all by yourself if you'd like to. The likelihood of you getting up there without dying is pretty low. Yeah. Or you can hire Sherpa, right? And the Sherpa is going to help you the crevasses and the canyon of lost voices and all, the fog of confusion that can descend on you when you are overwhelmed by the calling and the complexity that you can create for yourself in your business if you don't have somebody who can come in and be incisive and say, no, you don't want to be doing that right now. Or, you need to take this step and focus on this step for the next 90 days. And then let's see what happened. A lot of people don't recognize that entrepreneurship is a big, fat experiment.
Man, the time is running so quickly, so I'm going to try to get in some quick things here. Unfortunately, you're just dropping knowledge bombs all over the place, and I know that I'm going to pray. I'm going to leave it to the spirit that we can do a part 2, but I'm going to work on what I got right now, part 1. Want to ask you, what specifically are the 5 ways that many people ward off wealth?
Great. So I am going to invite people. You can see that Dr. Vibe has put on the screen the Wealthy Life quiz, and it's the Wealthy Life Readiness quiz. So when you take the Wealthy Life Readiness quiz, you will get a score for that, and then you'll have an opportunity, if you decide that you'd like to go ahead, to get my Welcoming Wealth mini course, which is all investment. So what I teach in the mini course are the 5 ways that we ward off wealth, as well as the 5 ways that we welcome wealth. So to just quickly go through the ways that we ward off wealth, the first one is worry. Worry, when I'm working with somebody, I can see, I'm psychic. When I'm working with somebody who's worrying, worry looks like a dark, gray, musty smelling old army blanket that's wrapped around whatever you're worried about. So if you're worried about money, that's what's going on. And money is going to be repelled by that, right? If you're worried about having enough time, time is going to be, compressed as a result of that. So worry is number 1. Number 2 is waffling. So waffling is unable to make a decision. And what that looks like is, let's say that you are at a live event, because someday we're going to have live events again, right? Let's say you're at a live event and you're sitting in the audience. The person on stage has something that they share with you that they can support you in your entrepreneurship, and it's a $10,000 offer. And you're like, oh my God, really use this. I think that this is the right person to work with. I'm feeling really resonant. This is exactly where I want to go with my business. And then you go off to the ladies' room or the men's room, and you get a text from your best friend, and they, hey, that Mediterranean cruise that we've been looking at for the last 6 years, it's on sale right now for $10,000. And now you have entrepreneurship, cruise ship, entrepreneurship, cruise ship, entrepreneurship, cruise ship. And you don't make a decision in either direction, and both ships sail. So waffle is being unable to make a decision. The third one is withdrawing. So let's say you've been here at this event that we're putting on right now, this virtual event, and something sparked in you, and you're feeling incredibly resonant with either working with me or Dr. Vibe, or pursuing some of the things that we've been talking about. And then you're like energized and you're on fire and you're like, oh my God, I've got to do this. And then all of a sudden you step away from the computer, or you leave the event or whatever it is, and you pull your energy back and you withdraw your inspiration and you withdraw your willingness to be experimental and your willingness to try something new and your willingness to take action. Well, if you do that, you're not going to create a wealthy life, because the universe needs you to be collaborating, right? Yeah. And so if you've been have somebody put in front of you that can possibly help you, or some idea put in front of you that feels resonant to pursue, you've got to take the step towards that rather than pulling away from it. Okay. So we've done worry, we've done waffling, we've done withdrawing. The fourth one is, let me think. I have to think about this. The fourth one is waiting on. So are we waiting on our handsome prince to come along and rescue us from our trauma or our drama? Or are we running around waiting on everyone else, like taking care of everyone else's business instead of taking care of our own business? And if we're waiting on either somebody to come rescue us, or we are being the rescuer, kind of the one who is, tending to everyone else without tending to our own business, then we're going to be warding off wealth as well. And I have to refresh my mind. Oh, whining. Whining's the last one. Whining's the last one. Whining. And whining, we often whine over wine. Or bellyache over beer.
Yes.
Sometimes if it's the guys, they're belly aching over beer, right? So whining over wine, I like to use the 5 W's because it helps me to remember, but it could be belly aching over beer. And so what happens when we're whining over wine is two things. Whoops. Let me fix my camera. There we go. What happens when we're whining over wine is two things. One is when we're whining over wine in a group of other people, and if we're putting our complaints into that group of other people, and they are then feeding their energy and their attention and their time and their life force into our complaint, we are now amplifying our complaint rather than our celebration. And when we're doing it over wine or any kind of alcoholic beverage actually lowers your vibration. And so it's like a double whammy to be whining over wine. Those are the 5 ways we ward off wealth.
Okay, wonderful. Geez, so much to cover, so little time. So I'm going to pull this out. So let me say this then. Why should someone seek to get wired for wealth? And what happens when they start to convert their calling into cash flow?
Yeah. So this is actually a much longer conversation.
Yes.
I think we need to be complete with today. And so how we are wired up for wealth, just to tie a bow on it.
Yes.
When we are wired up for wealth, we know when to set boundaries. So I'm going to set a boundary and say, if you are interested in finding out more about becoming wired up for wealth, then either take the Wealth Readiness quiz or reach out to me at my website, thewealthylifementor.com, and apply for consultation with me. And then, of course, you can also listen in to my beautiful podcast, Wickedly Smart Women, to learn from myself as well as all the amazing women that I spotlight and highlight and celebrate. So I'm going to set a boundary and say, no, we're not going there.
No, we're not going there. Hopefully there'll be a part 2. Before we let you go, any words of wisdom from your spirit? Because most of the time I'd say to friends who come on, you have any fun words, but I would like to say to you, are anything from your spirit that you'd like to share with the audience?
So what's coming in is I'm seeing the owl. And the owl, my dad is connected to the owl. And so the owl, there's two things. My dad used to say, he used to have a little saying that he would say, and that was, the wise old owl sat in the oak. The more he saw, the less he spoke. The less he spoke, the more he heard. Why can't you be like that wise old bird? So that's one piece that wants to come in. And the other piece is to start asking, instead of asking, how can I do this? Start asking, who can help me?
I love it. I love that. Angel, thank you for continuously adding light to myself and showing how important, when it's taken right, what the spirit can do for oneself.
Yeah.
When it's done right, I really, really appreciate you. I appreciate your son. I'm speaking it one day. I'm going to put it out there, spirit wise. I would love to have you and your son together on this platform, sharing some of your story and journey, because it would be so impactful, because I do a lot of helping of men. And also there's a lot of ladies out there that are raising boys on their own. And your victory story with your son, I mean, that would be so impactful.
Well, we will let the spirit guide.
Yeah, I let the spirit, but I just feel that, because that's really, like I said, after you shared that story, I said I could stop right here.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you being open, because I don't like to say vulnerability, because I hear that word too much. Just open and just to share with us personally, business wise. And I really appreciate you and your son and everything you have done, are doing, and will be doing. And you always have a home here. And as I said, if there's anything I can help you with, please don't be afraid to ask.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vibe. It has been my absolute pleasure to be here with you today. I really appreciate you and all you're doing, because the world needs more beauty and the world needs more men on purpose.
Yes.
And you actually exemplify both. You are a beautiful soul.
Received.
And you are clearly on purpose. So thank you so much for hosting me. I appreciate your platform.
It's our platform.
You're giving me the platform.
It's our platform, because hey, we're podcasters. We can't do it by ourselves, and if we did, we'd be burnt out.
That's true.
So thank you so much, everyone. I am Dr. Vibe, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations. I'm the host of Epic Conversations 2020 Podcast News and 2018 Innovation Award given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. Also, once a month, I host the only online broadcast in the world for dads and fathers that is sponsored by Dove Men Care. It's also co-sponsored by Dad Central Canada's National Fatherhood Organization. I'd like to thank Shirley and Ahmed, who caught some of this live, and there's some other people. If I don't name you, it's because of my head, not my heart. I always like to end off with this. Live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get small to get stronger. Block assumptions, and then aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. Love, faith, and respect. And especially during these times, give yourself grace. God bless. Peace well. Keep the faith. And thank you for watching. It's appreciated, not taken for granted. Goodbye, everybody.